let's get into this. I mean, the first thing I gotta say is like, can we just reflect on how wild this is? Like, I mean, obviously, your journey in 47 was far from what you expected, but I would say even this journey of the past year and a half is not what you expected. For many reasons, obviously, I've been reflecting back on you and I talking for that first time in Fiji in 46. And I know that you said in 47 on that last day, you came in with no other prize but the win. But it still has to be wild just thinking back on your two very different trips out to the island.
Yeah, I remember telling you, I was like, I feel like the backup quarterback at the Super Bowl. Like, and I just truly being able to like be on 47 officially, show up to Fiji knowing that I was going to play, it just already was such a different mental dynamic. Like it was just this idea. And there was a part of me, I remember talking to the producers before the game started and saying, like, I uh last year I like needed to play. And this year I just want to play. And I think that that
Mm.
year of like that year in between gave me the space to be like, it's already a win. Like you already won to just actually step foot out there as a contestant and like, let's play. It was so fun.
Well, to say you played would be an understatement. I mean, going into day 26, you had said, like, I feel good about things, but look, I function best when I feel like someone's breathing down my neck, so let me play like it is. Probably helped by the fact that Sam seemed, from our perspective, to really be putting up a fight. So give me
Yes.
your POV on this final tribal council. I guess, A, did you feel the way Genevieve was expressing last night that, like, okay, if I talk about my intentionality in doing these things, then I have it in the bag. And B, what were your feelings going through? Were things changing as that night went along?
Yeah, what's so crazy is like to back up just a tiny bit, like when I won that Final Five immunity, I was like, I think I just won the game. I truly believed in that moment, knowing I'd get Genevieve out that night. Like, I was like, I think I see the path and I really feel good about my chances. And then coming into that fire making, where I, of course, knew that perhaps Sam would beat Teeny, but like in the most outrageous, dramatic way possible, where the jury's jumping off the bench and everybody's freaking out. I was like, you couldn't just like win in a normal way. Like, you can just. And so that was very scary because I could tell the energy from the jury was so intense. And like, it was just the most dramatic thing that happened at Tribal the whole season. And then
Mm.
going into Final Tribal and knowing Sam, like, our relationship was always like sibling rivalry. Like he will like pick me up and give me a noogie, and like he is like that is our dynamic. And so I knew we would go in and bicker like little brother, big sister would. And so I was so prepared for that back and forth. And I remember being so scared. I was like, he is doing that when he pulled out like all those facts, like the numbers about his game. I was like, oh my God, I didn't think about that. And it was just so intense. And I really did. There was multiple moments like where I was like, I think I just lost the game at Final Tribal. Like I think I just, like it was so intimidating. He did so well. And yeah, I doubted like when Jeff went to count the votes, was the most anxiety I had in like days, where I really felt like it was locked up. And then all of a sudden I was like, did I underestimate him? And is this not going to go my way?
Mm.
So very fun and very intense.
Well, coming from that line of logic, when the votes came in, which ones were you surprised the most by, either in your direction or away from them?
I think that I felt like I knew that I would get Genevieve, Caroline. I felt like I was probably a lock for Teeny, and I thought Saul was on my side. Sierra was obviously could have gone either way and really struggled, like was in tears almost going to vote. And but there were signs previous tribals, like when I came in with the third necklace, I think she was like, I'm so proud of you. And so like those things gave me hope that I had a chance at her vote. Where when she was voted out, I was like, that's a Sam vote. Like if we go to tribal right now, I think she's voting for him. So I felt like the biggest question marks to me were Gabe and Kyle. And obviously I didn't get Kyle's vote, but ultimately I think Gabe recognized that the game I played was one, like he loves Mike Holloway. He loves Ben Dreber. Like he is that kind of player that I think would see himself playing that kind of game. And so, but I wasn't sure,
Hmm.
you just never know.
Well, you invoked one of those names. Let's talk about specifically your Ben-esque moment at the final six. This entire approach to the round, I'm super intrigued by. Your idea of not only deciding to play it incredibly low key about you having this idol. It's really interesting, even listening back to our 46 interview, you talk about one of your favorite moments in Survivor being the Amanda Kimmel idol play in Micronesia, which you just got to do. But then
Yeah.
also on top of it, your choice to go after Andy. So I would love to hear the way you approach that entire round.
Yeah, I mean, so what was not shown was when I told Andy about my block a vote advantage, he abruptly goes, "Rachel, you're my number one." And I didn't really believe him. I knew he was closer to Teeny, but I was like, it's so good that he is saying this to me because I feel like that means I can at least for the short term trust him. It's part of why Operation Italy, I was like more convinced that he wasn't going to flip because he had just said that. Like, why would you go out of your way? And so we come back from Operation Italy and I'm like, what's your game, dude? Like, why did you go out of your way to say something to me? I didn't say anything to you. It wasn't like a reciprocal thing. You said that to me and then to immediately stab me in the back. Like, what are you doing? And I was trying to guilt him because I really what I knew, what I wanted to happen was to convince somebody to vote with Sue and I so that I could play my block of vote at 6 and play my idol at 5. And so I immediately started kind of hounding him for it. And then I lose immunity. I know I'm gonna have to probably play the idol, but I sort of blackmailed him. I was like, he's like, I don't want to lie to you anymore. Like it's been fun to blindside people, but I'm done lying to you, Rachel. I was like, okay, well, if you're done, then this is what's happening tonight. Like I'm blocking Sam's vote. Sue and I are voting for Sam. If you vote for Sam with us, I will not target you at 5. I will, that is a deal, I promise you. And if you vote for Sam, or if you tell me you're voting for Sam and you vote for me, you will never get my jury vote at the end, and you will never get Sue's jury vote at the end. And like, I knew that he knew that the margins would be very tight if he got to final tribal, and he could not like give up 25% of the jury to kind of just like make up a lie. And so what I wanted him to do was genuinely tell me. And then I went on about, you're going to fight for credit for the Annika thing with Sam and for Operation Italy with Sam. You don't want to sit with Sam. You want to sit with me. I have a very different game. You've pulled the wool over my eyes, like, and just really tried to work him that day. Obviously, it didn't work. He came to me and said, I am voting for you. But I was very secure that I needed to play the idol and that I couldn't save it. And that made me feel good about like controlling the fact that I didn't waste something that I could have saved for later. And it allowed me to open that floodgate once he said, I'm voting for you. It's like, why? And now everybody is telling me this. And I can move into tribal when Jeff asks, how was your day, Rachel? Well, let me tell you, everybody told me that they have to vote me out because they can't beat me. And then now they have to, their hand is forced. They have to repeat what they said at camp in front of the jury when I know I'm not actually going home. And so I knew, I couldn't get Genevieve out. She had immunity. That was my target that I wanted to idle out. But ultimately, I felt like this was like as good of a move as I could make with my idol as possible. And obviously, Andy did, by exposing all this stuff, make me go, this guy's a wild card. This is not how I perceived your game. You did pull over the wool over my eyes 3 times, but I didn't see you this way, Andy. And I don't
Mm.
think that you're going to 180 that perception at Final Tribal, but I know kind of what Sam's going to say at Final Tribal, and I don't know what you're going to say. And that is very threatening to me.
Let's talk about optimization a bit because again, I would imagine you were the person that was almost NDS kind of running what would be the most optimal scenarios, especially when you get to a point where you have been blindsided a few times, you've lost some close people to you. You very much know that you are one of these now newly announced big threats. I imagine that you're not specifically going to sit back on your laurels and be like, all right, well, I'm just going to play this and win this, etc. That you had contingencies on contingencies. So talk to me about how you approach that end game. For example, when you lock in this bond with Sue, I would imagine that's a good example of you being like, I have multiple outs if the worst case scenario happens.
Well, so what was not shown that I was so surprised not to see was that after this year vote, literally that night, I go to Caroline and I go to Sue, and I'm like, I have wanted to work with you since we met at the hot dog social. At this point in the game, every single person left on this beach has burned me. And so I was avoiding the Tukus because of the Tuku tribal, where I was like, they were going to vote me out. But now that everybody's burned me, I'm going to go back to the people that like I wanted to work with anyway. And they wanted to work with me too. And Caroline was my number one from the day Sierra got voted out until the day she got voted out. And none of that was really shown. And so that trio with Sue and Caroline was before the one with Andy and Teeny.
Mm.
And so at eight, at eight, we come, I'm like, if I can bring these four people with me, I now have two very distinct paths to the end. If we can just get out Genevieve and Kyle and Sam, like there's no way I can't get to the end because I have this idol that no one knows about.
Yeah. So, I mean, from that perspective, talking about Genevieve a bit, because this was a dynamic that sort of popped up to us really latently, but it seems like both of you have expressed this happened very early on, and maybe you felt this with a certain respect from Caroline, as well of like the neither can live while the other survives to a certain perspective. Talk to me about this and also navigating that dynamic. Again, things are so fluid, things are all over the place, and who knows who you're going to be working with the next day. But there's also probably this idea still in your head of like, yeah, but I still want your head on my wall if I want to win this game.
Yes, I mean, okay, I hit the merge beach and I just see Genevieve and I see the way she operates and the way she moves around. And every conversation, Genevieve is standing there and listening 90% of the time and talking 10% of the time and never giving anything away. And I was like, this woman walks into conversations, takes all of the information, absorbs it, and walks out with giving nothing away. And that is so dangerous. And I went on like an anti-Genevieve campaign, like early in the merge, being like, do you ever notice that like she only listens to you. Like she doesn't tell you anything when you talk to her. And so I was doing that very early. And obviously I had Saul for a minute, on my side and we were trying to work together. And I was like, what do you think of her? He's like, can't trust her. Like she is good. And so it just reaffirmed that. And maybe that was his strategy to kind of keep us apart as well, but it worked. And so the two of us were at odds the entire time. We never BS'd each other. We never like acted like we were working together and then didn't. It was just so clearly on separate sides, especially because I did not trust Sam after he blew up Saul. I was like, I'm done with you. Like if I trust you again and then you blindside me again, I'm gonna look so stupid. And so I refused to work with him, and they connected immediately at the merge, which was another reason why Genevieve and I were just never going to be on the same page.
Hmm. Well, last thing I want to do is look at Final Tribal Council. You staved away a bit of Gabe's question as to like, how are you looking on your legacy at this moment based on everything? But I think it's worth it to kind of look at it because, listen, Lord knows even preemptively there has been some discourse as to like how your win ends up measuring up from fans and certainly players alike. And I mean, now that things are official, we can talk about some of the history that you made. Obviously, tying the record for most immunity challenges won by a woman. But even outside of that, I believe you are the Asian American contestant with now the most immunity wins. You have tied the record, I think, for the most jury votes a woman has received in American Survivor. So there's some like cool little factoids for the game that
Yeah,
you
I love
played that
it.
again wouldn't necessarily be the game that you thought of going in. And I still imagine that you have a bit of your, your nose to the palm trees without maybe taking a more outward focus on the game that you played. But how do you look back on it, especially when you have, even in the moment, Andy kind of like unintentionally revealing what the discourse was going to be months from now in comparison to maybe some other winners that had similar paths as you?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I do think a lot of like my answer to that question was cut out of like, the final tribal, but I feel like what I was trying to get across was that I didn't need to reconcile it. Like I think that yes, I came into the game. What Andy was saying is like we had discussions about our favorite winners and the types of games we liked. And my favorite winners were never the winners like Mike and Ben. And so the fact that my game went that way was astonishing to me. But I think also it's very easy to sit on the couch at home and say like that is a inferior game. And perhaps it is arbitrary and reductive, right? We know.
There we go.
But but I feel like it is like I had a path and I played the way I did because I had that idol in my pocket. Like I think it's so easy to be like it was all luck or you just knew, and it was, if I didn't have that idol, I wouldn't have played the same way. I had this safety in my pocket and it gave me license to like take a specific path, and I wanted to be enough of a threat so that when I used my idol, it would be in like fantastic fashion. I mean, we saw what happened when Sood played it and didn't get any votes. Like it's not as effective if you aren't kind of out in front and making a show of it. And so like not all of my game was intentional. I'm not going to pretend like it was, but there were definitely parts of it where I was like okay being elevated as a threat and okay like taking kind of that mantle so that I could do the most with the tools that I knew I had.
Yeah, and just just to clarify out there, I know that you had told me as your hot take that idols and advantages do nothing but trip you up and set you up to fail. But that was in the pre-merge, which should be
I did
noted.
say,
You
yes, I
it,
was saying in the pre-merge, I was not interested in beware advantages and journeys, and I held to that. I feel
yeah.
like, we've seen the journeys in the post-merge, there's usually only one, and it's kind of, it often is like, it did help me in my game, but in general, like, isn't that impactful? And then obviously idols in the post-merge are huge. I just mean when you're in that tribe dynamic in the pre-merge, anything, it took us like 2 hours to do those knots with Sam. If he didn't tell us, which is a huge risk, he's now sneaking away, spending time away from camp, being suspicious. Like none of that seemed worth it to me as the player that I was intending to come into the game as.
Well, no matter what those intentions were, what played out was fantastic. It was so much fun. I know it was obviously full of more ups and downs than you would want initially when if you found out you were going to be winning Survivor, but it really led to just such a fantastically entertaining game down the line. Your adaptability, your resourcefulness down to pocketing rice on day 4. That's when we should have known that what was in store for you, Rachel. So again, I cannot say how happy I am for you. I know this has been a long time coming in so many ways, and I'm so happy for you getting to watch that dream play out in so many different ways.
Crazy.
With
And
nothing
watch
sh
Shannon's stream too. He
there
won
you
to
go. Exactly. So hopefully you can buy 1,000 tiaras with the money that you're getting. Well, thank you so much, Rachel. As always, it's so great
I
talking with you, friend, and I'm so thrilled for you. I cannot believe it, and
thanks for being along this journey. I feel like we've talked so much, even
I
though,
know.
yeah,
No,
it's
the
been
pleasure
great.
was all mine. Happy to be riding the sidecar along this hell of a motorcycle ride that you were going through. So, I wish you and Derek and all of you and yours nothing but the best as you head into the holiday season and beyond. I cannot wait to see you now on the other side of things, Miss Survivor winner Rachel LaMont. It's been such a great time as always. Thanks again.